I was bullied at school. That caused me to have quite severe social anxiety. My dad actually just stopped seeing us, just cut us off. My life turned into work a job that I hated to spend Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday drinking with these friends. We'd do as much as we could, as hard as we could, every single weekend. I fell into a toxic relationship. I got married to someone that I definitely didn't love, not long gone through a divorce. I didn't have any money coming in. I didn't have any savings anymore. I didn't have a job. I'd met someone new. What a better way to dig yourself out of a hole than with the person that's in the hole with you. We launched an ad agency. We did 6 figures contract revenue in our first 3 months, and things seemed to be going well. We lost 90% of our revenue immediately.
Hey everybody, great to have you here as always, and a big welcome to you in particular if you're listening to the show for the first time. Join us as we explore the inspiring journey of Staniforth, a performance mindset coach and property investor. From a difficult childhood and crippling social anxiety to building a £3.5 million property portfolio, Jay's story took a dramatic turn after a single moment that changed the direction of his life forever. Tune in for a conversation packed with transformative insights and practical advice. So much to learn from Jay's story. I really enjoyed this one. Would love to hear what you guys picked up on this one as well. Do please let me know. And if you could kindly like, subscribe and leave a review, it'd mean a lot to me. And it means that we can reach more men who are navigating their journey. Thank you so much. I'm Harrison, and this is the Growth Voyage podcast. Enjoy. Jay, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, most welcome, buddy. And the way in which I always like to start these types of conversations is at the beginning of the journey. Our beginning usually shapes who we become later on in life. So talk to me a little bit about what that looked like for you.
Yeah, so the beginning of my journey was, honestly, I think when you look at your own journey, you think it's really unique to you and think that this is a really individual experience and nobody else is going to understand this or relate to this. But the more I tell this story and the more I speak to people, the more people say to me, that was exactly like me. I went through the same thing. And whether they were on the same sort of level or not, I think is almost irrelevant, because for me, for example, my parents split up when I was young and we were poor. And I could look at how poor I was compared to someone else, and that person would say, well, we were poor as well. But I think when it's you, it's as bad as it needs to be. It doesn't matter if you were really poor or just a little bit poor. To you, that's like the worst it needs to be. And that's what my experience has been. So yeah, growing up, I think I went through a childhood that a lot of people probably went through, which would have been parents separating, splitting of finances, probably a mum or dad, depending on who you lived with. I was with my mum, that was working multiple jobs to try and get through things. And I think when you go through that, you don't have a father figure in your life. I think most of us start to react to that, and we lash out in ways. And that was me. I was a bit of a troublemaker. I was bullied at school quite heavily, and over the years that caused me to have quite severe social anxiety, to the point that I would actually purposefully not win. I was really fast at school, and I'd purposely not win running races, because they introduced this little box system that if you came first, second, or third, then you stood on the box, and obviously everyone in the school looked at you. And I recognized that doing that put me out publicly in a position where people could judge me, people could pick fault with me. And it sort of started to teach me that actually being successful and winning things is another chance for people to tear you down. And that created a really negative relationship with me towards success and achieving things, the things that would make you stand out. So yeah, over the years I've been at school, that really sort of slowed me down. I was really withdrawn and held back. The anxiety was pretty bad for me, and it got to the point where I actually started to believe some of the things that these people would say. So they say I was ugly, I was short, I had crap hair, spotty, all these sort of things. And I'd think, yeah, do you know what? You're right. I am all of these things. And you start to believe it. And a defense mechanism I created was to try to get to the punchline first. So I'd be the kind of person that would, I'd take the piss out of myself. And I think we see a lot of people like this today where they make jokes about themselves, and it's almost like, oh yeah, it's just a funny guy, but it's actually a really serious defense mechanism to try and feel normal, to feel like you're fitting in, to be able to make it through the situation almost. And at the time, I didn't realize that was what was happening, but I see it a lot today in people. And, there's still days where that pops up for me when I'll, take the piss out of myself. And it's like, whoa, let's catch myself doing that, because I don't need to defend myself anymore.
It's almost like if you're able to take yourself down a peg, it means that other people can't do it before you can. Once you stick yourself down, it's like, okay, right, that's the protection mechanism. I'm really keen to touch upon your sort of childhood, and you mentioned like lack of a father figure there. At the time, what was sort of going through your head? Because I think the father is such an important part in.
For sure. I think when it first happened, when when my parents first separated, I was young, so I didn't really grasp the concept of what was going on, other than that I didn't see my dad as often. But as we got slightly older, and I'm talking like 7, 8, 9, obviously my mum started to date again, because she was a young mum, as she was. She had 2 kids, me and my brother, and she started to date people. And as that started to happen, I actually started to recognize that my dad became less present. He was already not that present. I'd see him some weekends, but then there'd be weekends where he'd plan to see me and just wouldn't turn up and wouldn't message or anything like that. So I was left hanging and kind of chasing this relationship with this man that I put on a pedestal and I idolized, because we only did the fun things with dad. Mum was the one that was disciplining me and making me do the boring things, whereas my dad was this like icon of what I wanted to be like cool and just relaxed and taking life as it was. And he was riding motorbikes and he had cool friends that got drunk. And, that's kind of what I saw. And I thought, wow, this guy's super fun. And then my mum's boring. And obviously now I look back and I recognize what was going on. But I think where I really started to notice this, and it was a significant event. So I'd actually reached out to my dad because we'd kind of lost contact a bit. Like, he'd send Christmas presents and stuff, but my mum had got into a more serious relationship, who's now my current stepfather. So they sort of have stayed together. They got into a more serious relationship, and it was evident that my dad didn't like this guy. And it was pretty clear that he didn't like my dad either. I think it was both ways. But they were trying to be civil with things. But I think because my dad used to let us down so often, it really got to my stepdad, because at the end of the day, he was a young guy as well. Like, my mum was young. This guy was young. We were all young. And it's hard to imagine this now. Like, this was all going on at an age that's younger than I am now today. And I think you don't realize that when you're a kid. But I reached out to my dad and said, look, I want a relationship with you. We don't see you enough. Can we meet up? So he said yes. And I did this without my stepdad knowing. I went and met with him. I started to see this guy again a little bit. And then he started to date a woman. My real dad did. And we saw him for a while. And this woman had some kids too. And I mean, I've never told this story before, actually, but this woman, it turns out, was an ex-prostitute. That's what this woman was. And she didn't like me and my brother because we were well behaved and her kids weren't. So after a while of seeing my dad and him being with this woman, my dad actually just stopped seeing us because she didn't want him seeing us. So he just cut us off. We didn't see him again for years, maybe 6, 7 years, I think it was. My brother at this point had kind of washed his hands with him. But after like 6, 7 years, I kind of wanted to have that relationship again with him, because I still had that young boy inside me that was craving this man's attention that I'd idolized for so long and had abandoned me multiple times. And that was kind of the first moment, I would think, when that happened. It was the first moment that I realized that this guy doesn't actually want to be around me. Like, he's choosing other things over me. And that was a hard thing to take. And that did cause friction, because I think because I wanted that relationship so badly with the guy that was pushing me away, I wanted it less from the guy that actually wanted to have that relationship with me, which was my stepdad. And I mean, I'll be honest, I probably realized this maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Like, I'm talking like 27, 28, 29. That's the sort of age that I actually realized, actually, I see what this guy was doing now. And all I was doing was pushing him away, like giving him hate, because I didn't want it from him. I wanted it from the guy that was rejecting me.
I really resonate with parts of that story and this sort of loyalty to your old man as well, because he's the first father figure in your life, right? And that, I say, avoidance or abandonment, however you want to call it, that's only going to draw you more and more towards him. And I'm really intrigued as to this time when you sort of finally took him off the pedestal, because I think that's a big part in the process. And the reason why we carry a lot of these wounds from childhood is because we're pedestaling our parents. And as a kid, we don't quite have the brain development yet to be able to decipher between, okay, what's real and what's the subjective meaning I'm applying to this person's actions and words. So everything that you've went through there, I could really feel that pain, and finally thinking, right, maybe I've got this guy into my life, and there's a bit of excitement there, and then a partner comes in and just completely derails you. Really, really tough circumstances. So talk me through, at what point did you go, oh, okay, right, something's going on here. I've placed this guy on a pedestal. I need to take him down a bit. And how did that process look like for you? Because I imagine there would have been a lot of emotions come up, which have probably been suppressed for years, right?
Yeah. So it was a little bit of a journey over a period of time. I mean, I went to university to study psychology to understand why I was the way I was, why I had such bad social anxiety, why other people that I looked at and thought they're basically the same as me were having such happy lives, great relationships, like great friendships, and I didn't have any of that stuff. And I wanted to uncover like what am I missing? And psychology, in reality I had no interest in psychology. I just had an interest in not being like the way I was for the rest of my life. And that's why I went to university. And at this time, I still had a kind of on off relationship with my dad. So I'd still be seeing him here and there. I'd speak to him a little bit. And yeah, I studied university, went and studied psychology at university. And I stepped into almost like an alter ego. What I did is I kind of stepped into somebody else's identity. So I'd gone there to like uncover my true self, but I'd actually stepped into mirroring someone else, someone that I thought was cool, doing what the cool people did. So like getting with as many girls as I could. I was drinking pretty much every day, a lot as well. I looked for anything that would attract women because I thought that's what cool people have. That's obviously a symbol of success, like having women. So I was doing underwear modeling. I did MMA. I went to the gym. I was training a lot, lifting weights. Really just got into a bit of an abusive relationship with myself. And I mean, ultimately, I became pretty popular, which is, I guess, is the, it's that negative, it's the positive reinforcement that you kind of need with this negative lifestyle you've created to go, well, I know it's not exactly how I want to be, but I'm getting the thing that I want. And that's kind of what I'd created. And I think that pattern had come from the way that my dad had treated me, because I knew we had a bad relationship and I'd be there whining for him as such, and I was having such a horrible time at home because me and my stepfather had such a bad relationship. But it was kind of like, yeah, but I get to see my dad sometimes, and that's what I want. So it's almost like it's worth the sacrifice of having a horrible home life to still get to see this guy and have that release when I want it. So that's kind of what happened in that situation. But when I left university, I stayed in this destructive pattern. But I think once you're out of that university bubble where you don't have your student loan and you don't have all these friends that don't really have any responsibility other than some study and whatever, and life is a party. That's the reality of university. It is, at least the university I went to. And you start to see people that have been working for 3-4 years, whereas you've been living this student life, and you start to recognize that, hold on a minute, these behavioral patterns that I've got don't actually fit in this real world. And that made me start to question things quite a lot. But at the time, I was still kind of seeing my dad. I had a circle of friends, maybe 10 or 12 of them, sort of thing, that I'd known for a long time through school. And literally, my life turned into work a job that I hated. I mean, I got paid well. It was a decent job, but I did not like it whatsoever. And I'd literally work to spend Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday drinking with these friends. And we'd do as much as we could, as hard as we could, every single weekend. And I recognized that was a problem. I fell into a toxic relationship. I got married to someone that I definitely didn't love. And yeah, I just created this life that fit everything that I'd gone through, sacrificing a lot of things to get the one thing, which was like friendship, acceptance, which is what I felt like I needed.
Yeah, I'm really keen to delve into a couple of topics there. The one that I really resonate with, I think there's a lot of similarities in our stories, but the one I really resonate with was, having this low sense of self-worth as a kid, and then suddenly it's like, okay, right, if I go to the gym and I get this body, then I'll be accepted and liked. If I get female validation, because that is the ultimate source of approval, especially for the nice guys. And a lot of the time, the nice guy, why he is the way he is, using niceness as a fear-based strategy to get the approval of other people and avoid rejection, it usually stems from the relationship with the father. And in your mind, you don't know any different, because at that age, and as you're going up, even into your teens, early 20s, and perhaps beyond, you only see that one tier. You only see that illusion of what life is and what success is, and all you see is, you don't have any concept beyond that, unless you've been brought up in a particular household, and even then you've got societal conditioning and just the way the world is. I think a lot of the time we grow up believing these are the things that bring us happiness, acceptance, all these different things. And I think you almost have to go through that process to then realize, oh, actually there's a deeper meaning to life. And it's interesting that you studied psychology to find out more about yourself, why you were the way you were. But then in that process of self-discovery, there were blocks in your way, right? There was the lifestyle, there were certain types of friendships, there was a lifestyle that was facilitating, or I should say, wasn't facilitating that process. You go down this lifestyle, and then suddenly your initial goal, it gets derailed a bit. So you're still on that journey, but now it's like, okay, right, you thought it was going to be a straight line to finding out who you are, but you've actually had to go through a whole other process to get to where you want to be. So let's dive into that then. And I really believe this. I feel like the universe is going to, you've essentially asked, put it out there, right, I want to find out more about myself. And you were expecting a straight line, and it's sort of giving you this detour. So talk to me. And I can really relate to all of this. Did you have an idea at the time that this was self-sabotage, you had an unhealthy relationship with yourself, or were you somewhat delusional because of this external validation that you'd finally received and that you hadn't received previously?
Yeah, so I think from studying psychology, it's one of those things where I knew what was happening. I knew, I was aware that I was sabotaging myself. I was aware that these relationships that I was having were false. I was aware that a lot of it was built on like reputation and material things and all that sort of stuff. I was aware that that's what I was building. But I think I'd almost got to the point where I was aware of it. I was willing to accept it because of what I was trying to achieve for the short term. And it was almost like, well, I'm aware of it, so I've got control of it, so it's okay for now. And when I'm ready to stop, I'll just stop. And that's kind of what happens. And that, if I'm honest, that's what happened with my marriage. So the girl that like when I finished university, I made it very clear to this woman that I met that, look, I was supposed to move to Australia. I was being considered for a relationship psychologist position over there that I'd been sort of linked up with through a family member. And I needed to save some money to get over there. So I'd basically got a job in sales. And I met this girl on a night out, and I said to her, like, look, this is, I didn't say this on the night out, this was afterwards. I said, but we got to the point where we started seeing each other, and I said, look, this is short term. If that's not okay with you, then we should end it now, because in a year, 18 months, I'm moving country. I'm probably not going to want to take anyone with me. I just need to go over there and focus on myself. And we agreed that that was the case. But you continue in with this behavior and this mindset and this belief that, well, I'm aware of what's going on and I've got control of it. But 7 years later, I'm married to her in a loveless relationship with someone that is enabling the constant bodily abuse, pulling me deeper into this cycle of drinking consistently, living for the weekend, not progressing or pushing myself to learn or grow, to read. And yeah, it was just this downward spiral. And honestly, like, I know people say that, well, this is the thing that changed it for me. This is like the wake up call. So when I got married, I had a great day. Like, it was a nice day. And that made me think, oh, okay, I know I'm a little bit unhappy in this relationship, but maybe it'll work. We've had a great day today. And I think that's what the wedding day can do for some people. But then the honeymoon, when the honeymoon happened, it just, the way that she behaved, it just brought everything back to me. And I thought, what have I done? And it was that thought of, you've just made this permanent. And that was the thing that woke me up. And I thought, I'm not living like this.
Wow, wow. Uh, so I'm really intrigued. Then you obviously had the doubts at the beginning, and you knew that right, this was going to be a short term thing, and it's so interesting. Like you were saying, we think that we're in control, but it's like, okay, this isn't going to be a long term thing. Okay, why are we investing energy and time into it? But it's again, it's like your belief system's so strong. But until you've actually really gone through the wake up call, you're not going to realize, oh, hang on, I'm just filling this void inside of me. I need this constant reassurance, this validation that I'm still loved and accepted. Amazing what the mind can do, and I'm really interested to hear about the point at which you thought, okay, this isn't right, but I'm still going on the same path anyway. I imagine it was the same sort of mindset, sort of holding you back. But was it maybe pride and ego, which was like, oh no, like I've proposed now, I've got to keep on going. This is my path. Or talk to me about that and why you perhaps didn't listen to these voices and doubts. Because I imagine it's normal to get doubts in any relationship. Like stuff's going to come out, and I'm sure in the strongest relationships, I can't speak from decades of experience, but I'm sure there must have been many times in a perfectly healthy relationship where there's been serious doubt. So what stopped you from listening to that?
Mm.
You can call it intuition, whatever you like.
Well, I think as humans, one of the things that keeps us driven, or keeps us feeling like things are going somewhere, is motion and progress. And I think this is why even in relationships that you're unhappy with, you just keep taking steps forward. And as long as you're taking steps forward, it feels like it's still worth sticking with. And the hook that kept me there, because I was aware I was unhappy. I was very aware of this. And I think a lot of friends knew that I wasn't happy as well for years. But in my mind, I always had this belief of, well, I trained as a psychologist and I know what's happening. I know what these feelings are and I know what this situation is. I can choose to end it when I want. But I still had that human need to keep progressing, keep moving forward. So we got a house, and then we got a dog, and then I turned down the Australia job, and then I took a different job, and then we bought a house, like an investment house type thing, a bigger house, sorry. And then we got engaged, then we got married, then we had the hunt, and it was like we just kept moving forward, and it was almost to the point that it was harder to just step out of it and let everything go and start again than it was to just keep going.
So stepping forwards for you was more materialistic stuff rather than growth in the relationship.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. But I think because I didn't see growth in the relationship, I just saw it as we got on okay. We had the same sort of friends. And, at one point, there was some level of attraction. And I think as those things started to become less meaningful to me, the relationship started to become more visible for what it was, but it still served a purpose in that I still planned on not being in the UK forever. And I still wanted to pursue eventually this career in psychology. And even though I was turning down every opportunity that would push me in that direction, you kind of miss it because it's like, yeah, I'm not ready yet. Oh, I've just got a promotion. I've just been given a company car. It's got a big pay rise. I've just bought a bigger house. Or we've got a dog now. And it's like, oh, there's all these things that are happening, and you end up just sticking with it. And it's like, when is going to be the right time? And I think this happens for a lot of people where things get minutely better enough that you're willing to sacrifice the thing that you exactly want, because we have to let go of something that feels like it's working for us to create the space for the thing that we actually want. But the hard thing with that is that when we create space, we remove something that we currently think is working for us. But the thing that we fill it with is not the thing that we truly want. We fill it with the hard work that is going to get us to the thing that we truly want. And that's a difficult thing to accept. If it was a straight swap, like, I want to upgrade my life. Okay, well, let's just change your 30K a year salary for this 110K a year salary. Then brilliant. Like, we'd all do it, but we don't. We replace this 30K a year salary for total risk, the potential of losing our house, potential of being seen to fail, potential of losing friends, our relationship, late nights, free time, hobbies. Like we that's what we replace it with. But that's what will get us to this 110k a year or 200k or a million a year or whatever it is you want. And we don't recognize that that's what's happening, but that is ultimately what's happening. That's why so many people just carry on. I had to sacrifice a lot, risk my house, the car, who's going to get the dog, the friendship group, telling the family, admitting to everyone that we'd just spent 25 grand on a wedding like within a year ago and now it's ending. Like these are all the things that go through your head. And the thing that actually made me do it in the end was I went to a Tony Robbins event, and this was I was constantly learning and growing and things like that in terms of psychology because it was an interest of mine and it kept me connected. So I did that from studying at university. I've always continued to learn and educate in that space. But other than that, I wouldn't read or do anything. No personal development.
Well, yeah, I mean, super keen to jump into this event, but it's just amazing when you list all of that stuff, just how powerful this need for external validation is. Because it's like all the outward stuff, the job, the car, it's like what's actually driving that, and just how much do we put it on a pedestal, right? Similar to how we did to our parents. It's just so deeply ingrained. And this is the whole thing about the nice guy stuff too. He puts everything else ahead of himself. And it's like, hang on, if you put yourself first, what would that actually look like? Well, you had your Australia plans, you had all these cool ideas. And yet, by putting other people first, it's kind of led you down this other path. So it's just, I just really wanted to point that out because it's crazy really when you just look at, right, we're so willing to do things because of the perception of what other people might think. It's absolutely crazy. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and I think again, like much of who we are is ingrained into us within, up until the age of sort of 15, but really strongly up until the age of 7, which is where really a lot of who we become is built. And I think a lot of stuff that we will learn during that time, which is when we're obviously children, is visual, is having stuff, and that's what a lot of people are judged on. Like if you have good things at school, I mean, I've obviously not been at school for quite some time now, but when I was at school, if you had the wrong trainers with the wrong logo on them, you weren't going to be you weren't going to have a good day. You'd be forgotten the next day if you changed your shoes or your jacket or whatever for one that had a good logo. The next day you'd be okay, and it just goes to show how much of a difference that makes. And then down to the way you look, the car that your parents used to drop you off in, even when I was young, where you shop for your food. If you shopped at Audi, for example, then you'd get laughed at. But if your parents shopped at Tesco's or Morrison's or whatever or Sainsbury's, then you're in a good family and you're not poor. And it's like, well, what even is this? Because as kids, we just don't have this concept of what actually really matters. So a lot of what we see is just visual. And I think that does flow through into your adulthood, which is why people still chase brand name stuff. Most people that today that want a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or whatever car they want, they don't want it for a reason for, like, most of the time, performance, comfort, reliability. That what they want it for is prestige, the way that it makes them feel because of how people look at them in it. That's what they want it for. And it's what it actually makes them look like in their perception of somebody else's eyes. That's what they want. They want that experience. Otherwise, why would you pay so much money for a car? I mean, I remember when I had a dream car of a Lamborghini, and when I actually test drove it for the first time, it was horrible. It was fun for like half an hour, but after that, I thought, could you imagine going down to the shops in this? Like, you just wouldn't want it. It's not an enjoyable drive, and it's really loud. So yeah, it's strange how we do that.
Yes, and I think it's just interesting to hear about, by the sounds of it on the surface, you're achieving levels of success in whether it's business, work, and of course, the relationships was more of an illusion from the outside. But I know a big part of why people go on to do well in their career and business is because they've got a subconscious desire to impress their father, who never sort of gave them that validation. So I wonder if that was a big driving force for you subconsciously.
Yeah, I've never really connected it back to my dad. My drive for success. I mean, there could be some grounding behind that. I mean, it aligns pretty well with what you've just said. But I don't know. I think one of the things that I wanted was that I always found pleasure in those moments when someone would sit down and talk to me, even though I felt like, even when I didn't have many friends at school and I was bullied, there would be those moments where someone that bullies you finds himself in a room with you on your own, or on a field with you on their own, and there's no one else around them to play up to, and actually the truth of what's going on comes out, and they just speak to you like a normal person, because there's no need to show off. There's no need to be like, oh, who's this loser, ha, ha, because there's nothing but who you truly are in those moments. And I remember walking home from school at times and bumping into people that would bully me, and they just have these normal conversations with me, and they'd even say things like, "You're actually all right, Jay. Like why aren't you more like this at school?" And I'm thinking, this is exactly how I am at school, except for there's not 14 people pointing at me and hitting me and throwing stuff at me. Like there's a difference. It's difficult to be this chill when that's happening. And but then the next day they go back to just as if they'd never spoken to you again. And it's those moments. I think those moments are where I think like that connection that I had with someone, with anyone, it just shows that even someone that hates me in public, I can have a moment with them and actually connect with them properly. And I loved that feeling. And that's kind of what I wanted to create in my life. I wanted to create true connection with people where I could be myself, because that felt freeing. But also these people could be themselves and not who they were showing, like pretending to be. Because I saw that. I could see that they were a different person. And I thought, you wouldn't, like, no one sort of pretends to be someone else as such on their own. You're just who you are. You're just your natural self. And that's what I wanted. And I think maybe there was some pull in that direction where I wanted to enable people to actually be who they truly were and still achieve the goals that they wanted without having to pretend to be someone else, which is what I spent a lot of my life feeling like I needed to do.
Yes, and I think underneath it all, we all just want to be loved and accepted for who we truly
Yeah.
are. It's so important. That's why we project our own insecurities onto other people, and the school experiences. It just makes you wonder, really. Like everyone sort of picking on you, and I just relate so much, man, because I'd be in a similar situation where someone's really nice to you one on one, but then in a group setting they've completely changed, and it's like, and I don't know, I learned to sort of distance myself from these types of people. However, as you were saying, can you go one better? Can you actually encourage them to, yeah, just be honest and open and vulnerable? And I think a big part of leadership is actually calling things out as you see it now. So I think chances are, if you go up to someone and they perhaps you can see that they're projecting something, can you maybe say, yeah, have a conversation with them and be like, look, mate, you don't need to do all this. You don't need to perform. Like, what was that about? And then actually connect with
Mm.
them on a deeper level. Because I think it's really easy, someone in your situation, to stay in this sort of, yeah, victim mentality, right? Which we've talked about a lot on the podcast. And we can all be a victim, right? The world can be a tough place, but it's what you do with the events as they unfold to you. And it's, yeah, not always the case where we take responsibility and think, right, how can I change the way I'm showing up to the world and not use my past experiences not to define me, but to actually be a catalyst to me becoming the man that I want to be. So, was the moment you took responsibility? Because the awareness you've already discussed, the awareness isn't enough, because we can have the awareness and not actually do anything about it. So, post wake up call, you're on the honeymoon and you kind of get this big, okay, right, this isn't it. Is that the moment you started to take responsibility for your life?
Yeah, I mean, it was really. So we'd gone to the airport to go on the honeymoon, and she proceeded to get drunk. I'd At this point, like I said, I'd kind of got more awareness of the situation. Like once we were married, I was like, oh, hold on a minute, like I'm not sure if this is where I want to be, and I was just more aware of what was going on. I think at this point, she got drunk in the airport. We got on the plane. She got more drunk on the plane and started kicking off, to the point that the air hostess said, if you don't calm your partner down, you'll be restrained or arrested on arrival to basically the airport. So I pretended that she had mental health issues to try and get out of it. And they said, oh, she's got some issues, going through some stuff. This is just how she is. My mum makes me take her away every year. And I was so embarrassed and ashamed. And I thought, I don't want to be around this type of person or behavior anymore. So yeah, as soon as we landed, we went to the hotel. I mean, we had a good time because I made some friends with some people as soon as we got there, and I just tagged onto another couple so that I didn't have to sit and spend any time with her alone. And she'd just get drunk, like really drunk every night. So because I didn't want to touch her, she got drunk every night and she'd pass out. And that was 2 weeks of the honeymoon. And yeah, when we got back, I was talking to a friend of mine who's sort of into personal development. I was talking to him about the sort of stuff that he did, and he invited me along to a Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within. And I said, yeah, I'm going to go. She decided that she wanted to come with me as well. So she came, and we did this like a visualization exercise. I always remember this. And this was the first time I'd really invested in myself other than university. I think it cost about $3,500 to go to this event. And my friend really had to twist my arm because I had this really negative money mindset that people just scam you and just want to take your money, like coaches are not real things. And, that's kind of what I believed. And we did this visualization, and he talked about uncovering almost like your V3 self, like the full potential version of yourself and the life that you want to create. And then he brought it back and said, but there's something stopping you from getting there. And in my head, I was like, because we all had our eyes closed. And I was like, yeah, there is. There's something. What is it? And then he said, you know what it is. It's in front of you now. And my wife's face appeared in front of me. And then he dug deep into it more, and I tried to change what it was, and I just couldn't get rid of it. I just saw her face. And when we stopped, he said, turn to your partner and share. And she was standing next to me. And I just went, I can't share. I can't share. And that was it. And yeah, within a couple of months after that, I said to her, I was like, look, I'm finished with this, and got divorced, left her, and I started again. Left her, left all the house, all the furniture, everything like that. Left all my old friends in that area, moved town, and started again.
I loved that. I love that picture of the visualization exercise. It's just like, right, it's just undeniable now, right? The seeds have been planted. Okay, right. When will you listen? When will you listen? And then once it's there, it's like, okay, there's no denying this. And I can imagine there was a sense of relief there because it's like, okay, right, I don't have an excuse now to sort of hold on to this. Like, this is confirmation. So talk me through that divorce procedure, the process after this event. Was there a sense of excitement because it's like, okay, right, I'm done with this now? Was there still a sense of sort of ego death of like, oh, okay, I've got to leave all this behind, I've got to swallow my pride? Yeah, talk me through, because I imagine there were mixed emotions there. Talk me through what was going on through your head at this point.
So, I mean, there was excitement initially, like this release of almost like I didn't need to be this other person anymore. It was like I had a secret that I no longer needed to keep. And that's kind of what it felt like, letting go. And I felt more confident in my ability to just reach for things that I wanted, because I was always put down by her and the friend group that I had about the things that I wanted to do. I used to walk into a room because I tried a few businesses before that to sort of step into this entrepreneurial thing that I had a tingling of, and I'd just get the sort of the Mickey taken out of me again. Like, oh, here's Jay the entrepreneur and stuff like that as I walk in. And I told my wife at the time that I was thinking about writing a book about my social anxiety, and she said, like, who would want to read about your life? And I thought, okay, so I didn't write it. And then I left her, and you sort of connect with actual people then. So there was some people at work that I connected with, someone that was helping me through some things. There was a guy and a girl that ended up. Actually, I was renting a house at this point. Those two moved in with me. So there was three of us living in this house, and we're all trying to sort of improve ourselves and do better. We were still drinking a little bit this time. I didn't completely stop like the drinking and things like that, but it definitely reduced. It wasn't even every week anymore that we would drink. We were reading more. We were going to the gym and exercising and training, and we were all working for the same company, and it was a horrible company. So I almost got rid of one problem in my life, which opened up. I could start to see the potential of what was out there now, and what freeing myself of these chains of what I thought I needed to keep with me to have meaning and substance in my life. Letting those go gave me more clarity as to what's out there. But then it also brought to light how bad my work situation was. So I was a director of a company. I'd grown this company from, it was making a 6-figure loss annually, and I'd gone in there to build the marketing team, and we'd got it to about 3.5 million a year, I think it was. And the company was just terrible. I mean, HR in this company was the office manager who had no HR experience and would just Google things. And I would obviously always Google them in favor of the business. There were people were bullied. It was just a terrible place. And I didn't want to be there. And I started sticking up for my team that I built. And as soon as I started to speak up for my team and against management, that was just the end of it for me. You know, the girl that was living with me got pushed out of the business. The guy that lived with me got pushed out of the business. They started to push me out of the business. And yeah, and that was when I ended up leaving that company. And that was when I really pushed into starting my first business that I thought I have to make this work, which was an agency.
How long were you working for this company then before you got sort of pushed out?
4.5, 5 years, maybe. Something, I think it was 5 years. Quite some time. It was like a company of like 7 people, 8 people when I first joined, and we got up to 100 members of staff. Yeah, like we saw significant growth, but as more money was made, the company definitely lost direction, and it just became about money.
By the sounds of it, you had joined there when you were still in your old life. So you've joined that company with this certain culture. And then as you've sort of started to let go of your old life and let go of your old patterns and behaviors, suddenly you haven't got this clouded judgment, this woman by your side who's, well, not really by your side, just tearing you down. And yeah, it's crazy to me hearing that. But at the time, you don't really realize anything different. You just think this is normal, and it's like, okay, I guess not everyone has to support my goals. But it's interesting in the sense that once you've sort of woken up from that, suddenly you've woken up from you've started to get more attuned to your values and stand up for yourself and have a bit more value. So I love that this period of like speaking out against things that you don't stand for has come at the same time that you've started to wake up, which is really cool.
I've never actually connected those two things as being the reason or potential reason that would have happened, but it does make a lot of sense because I saw a lot of stuff in that company over maybe a year before I started speaking up where I thought, well, I wouldn't be very happy with that, or I think that was a bit unfair, but I just went with it because I was progressing, I was moving forward, the business was doing well, and then yeah, and as soon as I left her, I almost assigned the meaning actually is that since I left her, the owners lost respect for me because he came to the wedding, and I thought, oh, he thinks like I'm not committed and he's questioning, and this is why he's being like this now. But in reality, what it probably was is like what you said. I just started to call things out. Like, you can't speak to people like that. You can't walk into an office full of people screaming at them that they're useless and that you don't care about them, and that they're going to get sacked. Like, you can't treat people like that. And I would speak up about that. And yeah, and he definitely didn't like that. He didn't like pushback for sure.
It's interesting because we talked a little bit about the patterns beforehand of the sort of people pleaser, nice guy doesn't know his own worth, and a lot of the time he doesn't actually know what he stands for, right? What he will tolerate. He'll, again, because of the bullying experiences at school, he will just sort of look for any sort of validation from anyone and never really goes internally. So I just absolutely love that at this stage you've sort of figured out, right, actually no, like I don't stand for this. And yeah, I think that's a huge part of the journey is knowing what your values are, knowing what you stand for, and then that's how you can attract more aligned people and opportunities into your life. Whereas beforehand, you're just looking for any source of validation, so you're going to attract those types of
Mm.
scenarios. And yeah, I imagine that's what sort of happened in your sort of marriage and with that partner, where yeah, that sort of dynamic, it was, oh, okay, right, this is validation, this is what it feels like to be loved. Whereas I think what a lot of people need to know is, no, like your life can be amazing. You can make it exactly what you want it to be. So if there's any inkling that something's not right, then you can do something about it. But I appreciate without the wake up call, it's really, really tricky to get there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like they say, awareness is the first step to change, but as you sort of alluded to earlier, it doesn't guarantee change. You've got to still be willing to do the work. And awareness is almost like, I do like to envision like our bodies as being almost like little bowls with little thing like space for things to be slotted into, and then all the other things in life that you want and don't want are just laid out around you, and you can only fit so much in the bowl. And it is one of those things where you can become aware of something not being right or not something not aligning with you, but you need to be willing to let go of something that feels like it works. Because the reality is, even the things that you know are not serving you, they are serving you in some way. It's like if you're avoiding doing, like, you're trying to grow a business, the goal is to grow your business, but you're avoiding doing sales calls. And you think, well, it doesn't make sense why I would do this. Like, that's not something that actually logically makes sense to me. But if you think about it, it does. Because yes, by not doing the sales calls, you're not going to make the sales, but you're also avoiding rejection. You're avoiding confirmation that you're not good enough to close business and to run a business. So then if you do fail and the business does shut down, then you can say, oh, it's just because I just didn't do the sales calls. If it had just done them, I'd have probably succeeded. So it actually serves you to keep things that don't serve you as part of who you are. And it's that is the difficult change, because that's what you need the awareness of. But then you also need the ability and the drive and the willingness to let go and replace with something that has the perception of being harder initially. And that is the reality. It is going to be harder initially, but you've got to be willing to make the change if you really want something. You've got to be willing to step into that zone of discomfort to truly find out who you are and what you're capable of.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's it. It's we live in the age of comfort. We have everything that we want, and I think because that almost becomes our norm. That's why I always say, look for the discomfort, not just in the hard conversations, for example, and really looking at these areas where some part of your body's being activated by, but also, whether it's waking up at a certain time, whether it's doing cold showers, whether it's going for a run, going for the gym, just keeping yourself in that state of discomfort, I think, is how you grow, because there's always going to be resistance to get to where you want to be. So talk me through this process then. So you've left your company. Were you looking for something new at this point? What was the driving force for you to then go on and build your own thing?
Yeah, so I mean, it was panic stations in a way. I'd just bought a house, so I'd bought another house. I'd met someone new, and then I left this company, and it was like it was a heated departure, should we say? It wasn't like an amicable breaking of partnership, and a 2-year legal battle pursued from that. This was just at the start of COVID. So there was obviously the concerns around that as well. And the sort of step that seemed like it made sense was to start a business. So I thought, it's one of those things where they say, like, when you hit rock bottom, that's when you actually do the things that you truly want, because what else can you lose? I didn't have any money coming in. I didn't have any savings anymore because I'd not long gone through a divorce. I didn't have a job. I'd been with the same company for nearly 5 years, so I didn't have, sometimes that can be a bad thing for people that employ, like you're stuck in your own way. And I just thought, what do I do? And I thought, well, the one thing I do know how to do is market. I can run ads. So I spoke to my partner and just said, do you want to launch an agency? So that's what we did. We launched an ad agency. We did 6 figures contract revenue in our first 3 months. And yeah, like, things seem to be going well.
Yeah, let's rewind there, because I want to really get a clear picture on what this process looks like. So rock bottom, majority of your money has gone towards this divorce and you've hit this state. So how would you go from that to building a business to then generating 6 figures? Talk me through that process, because a new relationship is a whole other growth journey in and of itself. Running a business will show you the parts of you that probably need looking at too. So there's 2 big growth journeys in there. Plus, you need some money. So talk me through this whole process, what it was like mentally. Tell me all about that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that I'm a logical thinker. I know that a lot of us think and act based on emotions, but I do believe I have that ability to step back and assess my emotional thoughts from an external perspective. And I looked at my life and I realized what I'd gone through and how much time I'd wasted. And I realized that every difficult decision that I avoided making, I usually avoided it for years and then ended up making it anyway. and the fallout from the delay was all that much bigger. So I sat down and recognized my reality of, I don't have money coming in. I don't have savings now. I don't really have a friend group. I've got these two people that I know. I've just bought this house and I don't really know where to go from here. And I recognized that I had some doubts around working for somebody else again, because I'd worked with someone that was really nice. And as soon as I started making him money, his true self came out. And I thought, I don't want to waste another 5 years of my life doing that with another business owner. So how can I mitigate or minimize the chances of that happening? And that was when I realized, if I start my own thing, I can decide what the culture is. I can decide how the business operates. I can decide who I work with. And my relationship was new, but we'd worked together for a little bit at this point. And I knew that she wanted more from life as well. So I knew she was good at what she did. And it just made sense. Like, our skills aligned. We were in this together. We were both at the same level of distress. Like, we'd bought a house together. We were both in this situation. And I thought, what a better way to dig yourself out of a hole than with the person that's in the hole with you. So that's kind of what we did. And like I say, we knew marketing. And so it was the obvious choice. And I think I'd got into this was early days of someone like Alex Hormozy coming to light, where he just sort of started to surface, from memory. I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure. And he talked about 100 outreaches every single day. And I knew that wasn't an effective way to market, but I also knew that I didn't have the resources to market any other way. So I didn't have a following. I didn't have a brand. I didn't have money for ads. I didn't have anything. And I thought, well, in lack of resource, you're going to have to put in sweat. So that's what I did. I literally jumped onto LinkedIn and just started cold outreaching. I couldn't do 100 people a day. It actually stopped me from doing that many, but I'd just do as many as I could. And within the first week, it was a really large UK property training company that reached out to me and said, we're actually launching something new, and our current ads company don't have the capacity to take this on as well. So we're looking for someone external to help with us. Is this something you could do? It literally was luck and timing. I was just willing to do the work to get in front of those people, and I happened to land in front of someone at the right time. And we secured a contract with them, running their ads for this new launch. So it was like a book to an event to then a high ticket sale process is what they did. We were basically promoting the book and running ads to a series of books. We did that. And then we got a couple of other clients on, and things just started going well. We had, like I said, 6 figures in contract revenue within the first, it might have even been the first month, but certainly within the first 3 months, we definitely had 6 figures in contract revenue coming through, which is not a great deal of money, but it was more than I was being paid at the company before, and required a lot less time, a lot less stress and I was doing it with someone that I actually liked working with. So, that worked for me. That was good. And it made me realize that I can start from nothing and create something.
Yeah, it's such a powerful lesson too. If anyone's listening to this, going through a tough divorce or questioning their life choices and in the thick of it, then knowing that there is better things on the horizon. And I always believe that these events were chosen for us, before coming down here. That's just a personal belief of mine. But however way you want to see it, these events are the catalyst to then go on and discover your true self, and it throws you into a greater life of alignment. And without those challenging points, without those breaking points, we spend a larger portion of our life almost living a lie, essentially, and living an unfulfilled life. So I think it's really cool that you had the courage to sort of step away, and also just starting something new as well from nothing, and building it up, and just putting in the action. And I do think you will be rewarded when you put the work in. But like you said, a little bit of luck, but then to get that luck you have to put in the reps as well. So I really like this idea of meeting the universe halfway. I think that's a really, really important part. How's that experience been, building that company up? Talk me through that journey, because I imagine you've been through a whole spectrum of emotions there.
Yeah, so I'll kind of fast track through some of this stuff here, but we were running ads and we were taking on clients, and I'd sort of fallen into that position again where even though we were making the money that I thought I wanted, again, that substance, like physical based thing that I was looking for, material things, I actually realized that I was working way more hours than I was being paid for. The clients were not appreciative of the work that we were doing, even though we were beating the targets that were set for us. And I was ended up working more and more to try and justify the value we were bringing them, even though we were already, like I say, beating targets. And it was that I started to recognize that I was slipping back into a place of feeling like I needed to prove myself. Right. And yeah, like self-doubt was setting in. And at around the 6 month mark, our ads account got banned. So we tried to fight it for a couple of weeks to get it back, but as most people will know, Facebook is not the most helpful company when it comes to your ad account getting banned. You don't really know why it happened, but I mean, it turned out that the company that we were running for, they had, like I said, they had another ads agency and another ads agency in their account, and we were all operating on the same account. They did something that got this main account banned, which banned all the accounts connected to it as well, or something like this. This was how it was explained to me. So we basically couldn't get our ads account back, and we lost like 90% of our revenue immediately. So again, we're back in the same place, and we just shut the ads agency down because we couldn't do anything with it. And we kind of started again, but we'd kept a couple of clients on. Both of these clients were coaches who came to us for ads initially, but then we actually started working with them, helping them to build out a program, a marketing structure, more systems, that type of things. And we created a business called Expert Unleashed. And that's what we did. We basically helped coaches, creators, and consultants to build a brand, build a program, and create impact. And we did that for, I think, about 3 years. We were doing that 4 years, maybe. We created a number of 7-figure earners, a lot of 6-figure earners, and then some people were just, hitting those sort of like going from nothing to 5K a month type positions. Saw a lot of success in that. And I really enjoyed that business. I really did enjoy that business. But what I recognized during that time was that a lot of the people that weren't getting results, it can't have been because of the strategies, because most people were getting results. And that was when I started to realize that I could actually utilize my background in psychology to work on people's mindsets and help them with that side of things, because it was mindset that was stopping them getting results. And that was a big learning for me, that it's not just the strategy, it's actually about the person behind the strategy as well. So that was good. And we started to dig into that. One of our clients that we'd helped to get to 7 figures was a property investor, and he wanted to build a property coaching business by running events. And like I say, we got him to 1.2 million, I think it was, in 18 months. And I saw the success that some people were having going through his program over a period of a couple of years. And I realized that I didn't really have a pension. I wasn't really making money anywhere else other than this business. And the last one failed eventually. I don't have savings because everything I've got is being reinvested. And I just thought, I need to protect my future wealth here. And maybe property is the way to do it. So I stepped away from Expert Unleashed. My partner, who was my business partner and my life partner, took it and partnered with a bigger company in America that was doing 7 figures already. We were only doing like multi-6. This company was doing 7 figures. So she went and partnered with him, and I started investing in property. And this is where I built a £3.5 million portfolio. I think we're close to like 4, something like that now. I've not done a recent count, but we built a portfolio in the UK anyway. And we still have that business now. But after about a couple of years of doing that, I realized that, again, I was making the money that I wanted to make. I built this portfolio. Technically, I could stop working and never work again. I mean, I wouldn't be living a lavish life with what we've got, because I think, £3.5, £4 million of property, people have this perception that you are rich with that. And you're not, because it's obviously weighed against debt. And also you've still got mortgages to pay. And then you've got money you need to put aside for maintenance and investors and things like that. And then you've got money that's profit. So yeah, it pays enough to not need to work again, but it doesn't pay as much as what people think, I think is a crazy perception people have. But I had the money that I'd set out to achieve. And I found myself in this place where I was like, something is still missing. And my partner was getting a little bit frustrated with the company she had partnered with. She said it felt more like I was working for them rather than partnered with them. So she stepped away and started running our property business for us, which she still runs today. And I, at that point, looked for a coaching program to start helping because I didn't want to start another business doing what I was doing before. And I didn't really think about doing mindset coaching at the time. I was just thinking business growth, coaching programs, branding. That's the direction my head was going. And I didn't really want to start something like that again. So I got contacted. You could call this a universe or whatever, but I made the decision that I wanted to find a coaching program to support. And the next day I got an email saying that there was a coaching program looking for someone to support. So they interviewed me. They offered me the job pretty much there and then. And what started off as a client success manager role turned into a performance mindset coach. So I was creating program modules. I was coaching one-on-one. I was doing an hour's group session every single day, Monday to Friday. And we doubled the client retention rate in the program. We doubled the client success rate. We introduced new programs at higher revenue points because of the new value that we were given. And over the course of 3 years that I was working with this guy for, we coached over 500. Well, I personally coached over 500 people, over 3,000 hours of coaching delivered. And we found that this was a program built on strategy, helping videographers and agency owners to grow their businesses. And over 90% of the testimonials that we got referenced the mindset work that we did as being either the or one of the pivotal things that helped them get the results in the program. The others just didn't mention it. But it just made me realize how important mindset is, because there were people in that program that were doing the strategies and not getting the results. And then we'd sit down and dissect something with them based on mindset and performance, and something around their belief system or the identity that they operated from. And they'd go from not making any money to one guy closed an 80K deal within a month of me having a 1 hour call with him. And, and specifically said, the shift that you created in me enabled me to see things differently. And that's how I went and got this business. It just changed the game.
Yeah. Even going back to before, I think it's awesome that, at the time you thought that, okay, right, my last company that I was working for wasn't my thing. And okay, this is my thing. And then that gets taken down. And yet you kept on going. I think that's just evidence in and of itself of a strong mindset. All right, cool. That didn't work. And this is why when we attach so much to the external stuff, these things can come and go. And that's where we can have an identity crisis and really struggle. So I just love how you've just kept on going. And despite on the surface having everything that you needed, there was still something deep within you. There was still a purpose to be felt. And I love that you could feel that resistance, and that sort of led you onto the mindset path. And from the sounds of it, it seems like this has been a far more fulfilling journey for you, just being able to actually change people's belief systems. Because when you're building a business, it's not just your business stuff, right? It's your mindset, it's your everything. So you helping them in this one area, this doesn't just help their business, it helps them in all areas of life. And this is why shifting belief systems can have a huge ripple effect on people and the change you want to create in the world. I remember a great quote I've heard is, you don't have business problems, you have personal problems that show up in business. That really resonates with me, and I think it's so cool that you've gone into that line of work. And yeah, it's also really interesting to hear about you and your sort of life partner also being business partners and being a real team. I'm keen to touch upon that before we move on to the closing traditions, because when you've got two highly ambitious people, how does that work in the relationship setting? Do you find that sometimes you've got to really emphasize time together, quality time? How do you manage, right, both of you being stressed on the business, and how do you sort of come back to the center? I'm really intrigued to hear about how that journey's gone for you.
I mean, I've maybe learned this the hard way, which is actually, I think, is the best way to learn something. Like, experience is the only teacher. And what I've found is that my partner is very strong-minded, and we argue. We do argue. And I'd always say this, like, if you don't have arguments in your relationships, I think there's a problem. There's something brewing, because one of you is living out of alignment. It's highly unlikely that a relationship will just agree on everything. and that there'll be a no emotional pushback on something. It doesn't logically make sense that that would happen. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely, which means arguments should happen. And I want my partner to be passionate about things that I don't care about. And when I show that I don't care about them, I expect that she would get a little bit emotional about that because it's something that means something to her. But what I've built this, well, we've kind of built this process behind is we would rather our arguments be hot and fast, but finished quickly. That's what we want. And we've got to the point now where we could literally blow up at each other arguing for 15 seconds, and then one of us will start laughing and the other one will start laughing, and then we're done. And at that point, we'll just say, so what do you want to do instead then? And then we'll make a decision based on how we want to go, what decision we want to make together. And all it is we're just allowing the emotion to be there. You know, we know we're in a safe environment. We know that we trust each other. We know that we both have the same goals. And I think that ability to demonstrate our passion towards something that we are both very passionate about, but also respect that each other want to share that, and then recognize that there's no way to win an argument in a relationship. If one person wins, the relationship loses. You either both need to win how you just agree, or you both need to lose in the fact that both of you are wrong and we need to come up with something together. That's how you win. Yeah. So I think knowing that, and again, it's that awareness that if one of us wins here, the relationship loses. Like, you might feel good walking away going, "Ha, beat you," but you're going to suffer it for the next 2 weeks, or I will suffer it for the next 2 weeks because one of us feels like we've been shorthanded. So that's one of the things I'd say. Allow and acknowledge that you're both passionate people, most likely, and that you should be able to display that, and you shouldn't take it personally because it's about them, not you. And your focus needs to be on say your point, then resolve. Don't say your point, then try to prove your point, then try to disprove their point, and then try to further the point, then explain how your point means more than their point. Like, what are you trying to achieve? There's no point. Like, what is the outcome? My outcome is understand what you want to say and then find a way forward so we can move past this. That's my outcome. And that's what I try and move everything towards. So yeah, first thing is that, how to handle emotional outbursts or arguments. The next thing is understanding the journey, because although we're both passionate and both run a business together, in the beginning that can be difficult. And I always say that the best, and I can only say it from a man's perspective, but the best, I guess it works for both, but the best partner that you can find is a partner that loves two people. The first person is the person that you are today. They've got to love that person, the person exactly as you are today. But they also need to love the person you're trying to become. And they need to be okay with the fact that that person you're trying to become is going to come with a tumultuous journey. There's going to be struggle, there's going to be pushback, there's going to be emotion, there's going to be ups and downs. There could be loss, there could be loss of self. You know, who knows what's going to be involved, but you need to understand that that's the person I'm going to become, and you need to be in love with that person as well. You need to be on board with that person. I think Alex Hormozy and Layla Hormozy really embody that. I think when she said, "I'd sleep with you under a bridge if it came to it," that I love who you are today, and if this is as good as it gets, I'm still with you, but I also love who you're trying to become, and I love the effort in it and the sacrifice you're making to get there, and I'm here for you to support no matter which end of the bridge it ends on. I'll be with you. That is proof, that is evidence of someone loving who you are, but also loving who you're trying to become. A good partner, a relationship, in business especially, they need to be that. They need to be that. Even if they're not in the business with you and they just have a normal job, that's fine too. But they still need to love two people. Otherwise, very difficult.
I absolutely love both of those points, and just especially like putting the ego by the door and just being constructive, right? Looking for a solution, and I think that can apply to many areas of life. And from what you described, your relationship has such strong foundations, right? Because you met at a point where, yeah, you didn't really have much going on for you. It sort of breaks that fear of, okay, like, what if this person leaves me for money? And I remember speaking to a good friend of mine and talking about how in love he was with this woman, but then when he started to tell her about his financial situation, she ended up sort of going off and was sort of scared by it. But then the way I look at it is, well, wouldn't you rather have that confirmation now than sort of maybe find out a couple of years later, and then when you lose your money, she's off again? Not to say that would have happened necessarily, but I think there's something really powerful about rebuilding from rock bottom together. It's really beautiful story. So really appreciate you sharing that. And I just love this idea of having a shared vision and being in love with the person that they are now as well as the person they're becoming. Because I know in my journey, especially, and on the growth journey, you have this vision of who you want to become in the future, and you can get so attached to that vision that I think that can cause disconnection sometimes because you're not quite that person yet, and you're already going to be your own worst critic, I believe. So if you have someone else who's also not understanding of that situation and also doubling down on that, I think that can create a lot of resistance. So I really enjoy that point. And I think also it's just so cool to see how you're in this sort of completely toxic relationship beforehand with all these dysfunctional patterns going on, and you've really taken that experience and thought, okay, no, right, I want to be a different person. I want to change my life. And you've gone and done that. Because of that, you've sort of manifested this beautiful partnership now. And by the sounds of it, will be there for life, right? A real life partner, which is so inspiring. And it just goes to show, like, if you do find yourself, if something's not quite right, don't stop there. Keep on going after what you want. It's going to be a rocky journey.
Mm.
It always is. But I think a big part of the journey is learning to shift your perspective on everything. The challenges that do come, do you see it as a catalyst for then the next stage of growth? Is this the point where, okay, right, something's not right. Thank you for showing me this. Let's move on. And I think that attitude can really just shift your perspective,
Mm.
because you can't avoid the challenging times, but you can change your perspective on them. And I imagine that's been a big part of your journey and the mindset shifts that you've encountered. So thank you so much for sharing all that. Really, really cool. What we'll do is we'll move into the closing traditions of the podcast. If you're tuning in, drop your questions in the chat and we will get through them. Before the questions, we have two questions that we use every episode and their routine. The first one is a song recommendation.
A song recommendation. Wow, that's a good question.
Toughest one of the day.
Do you know, it probably is, because I'm not a big listener of music anymore in terms of like normal songs. I'll tell you one that I do like. I'm trying to think of the artist now. It's called Experience. Is it by Vida Lucci? Something like that. I can't remember the name of the artist. It's basically a classical piece. It's called Experience. And it's kind of like very Hans Zimmer, that kind of vibe. That it's on a playlist that I have, and it just plays through, and it really builds and creates emotion. And it's in one of my concentration playlists, just when I'm doing deep work, and it goes into this song. And weirdly, it always breaks my concentration, but it pulls me into this state of just self-thought and awareness and presence. And it always reminds me of the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Just being present in the moment, and that's where your greatest power and potential is, when you're not feeling anxious about about things that have happened in the past, and you're not fearful of the future. You're just looking at what is now, because now is the only reality. That song really, well, it's more of a track than a song, I guess. That really sort of connects with me, and I just I love that track. So yeah, I forget the name of the artist, but it's called Experience. It's very famous, so you'd find it pretty easily if you search for it.
I'll certainly be giving it a listen. And I love that answer. I'd love to compare that to your song suggestion 10 years ago.
10 years ago would have been Metallica, Enter Sandman. I'm not even joking.
Well, I mean, that's it. It's a whole shift, isn't it? It's a whole shift in consciousness and taste, and it's something I'm looking to get into more. Is because I love my tech house and groovy songs, and I also love the classics. I've been really getting into John Lennon recently, which has been awesome. Although I think there's a real art to classical music, to really like sinking into it and appreciating the art. Yeah, wicked suggestion. I'll certainly be giving it a listen. The second question is a book recommendation?
Yes. Well, obviously, I'm going to say my book. It's I actually have it here. There's that book. So Start Messy, Succeed Anyway. Is like the psychological journey or the inner work that entrepreneurs need to work on to find focus and build wealth without burnout. But in terms of a book that somebody else has written, I mean, I always come back to it. I always come back to it. Is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That book really made me appreciate the power of just where we are now and what we have now, and that finding more and chasing more is not going to give you the peace or the contentment that you think it's going to bring to you. And that connects with my journey, because I chased popularity, got it, wasn't fulfilled. I chased money, got it, wasn't fulfilled. And at the end of the day, I think all we want to be is happy in the moment, like feeling like we're content with where we're at. If it all ended today, would you be happy with what you've achieved, with what you've done, the impact that you've had, or how you felt most days? It's not necessarily about, of course, I want to achieve more. I want to help more people. I want to travel more places. That's never going to end. And I think we have to appreciate that most goals are not goals. They are milestones. And The Power of Now made me realize that, the people that chase 5K a month, they hit it, then they're after 10K. People after 10K, they hit it, now they want 20. They're not goals. They're milestones. So what we have to understand is, what does achieving that milestone actually change for you? What does it do for you? Because if nothing changes, it's pointless. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean anything. And it's only when you get present and you allow yourself to sit in your thoughts, those moments of solitude almost, that you start to have these inner conversations and you truly uncover what's actually important to you. And that book, The Power of Now, really did that for me. It's a tough listen on audio, but I think it helps if you listen to it and read that book. I've read it 2 or 3 times, or maybe 3 times now in full. And I still pick something new up every time I read it.
Yes, I think that's a great point, that a lot of these books need to be studied to an extent, and it's not just something you just read and listen once and that's it. That actually used to be my mentality, like, right, get through all the books. It's like, nah, like, how can we apply this at different stages? And now I'm been really getting into reading books that I bought when I was like 18, 19, 20, the classics, but not really understanding it at the time. And now I can look at it through a different lens and understand it differently. So I think that's a wicked point. Yeah, I would love to check out your book. We'll put that in the show notes 100%. I think that'd be an awesome read. And yeah, it's really interesting. You mentioned the point there that really stuck with me. It's like, okay, how did I feel during my time on this earth? Like, how do I actually feel internally? And I remember looking back at old pictures of me. I remember thinking, oh yeah, that looks so fun. And I would get nostalgic about these moments. But then I'd actually think, actually, no, how did I actually feel at the time? Because it was before I'd uncovered a lot of my truth, right? I was just kind of like anxious a lot, guessing, felt a bit lost. And actually, if I were to go back to those periods of time, I was in a state of angst a lot of the time. So it's really interesting. I think our mind can fool us, and on the path of growth, sometimes we can think, oh, I kind of wish I was back there and back in the old times. But then actually, if you went back there, it wouldn't have be as good or as glamorized as it would be now, perhaps. So yeah, I think that's a wicked point. I'm really happy you mentioned that. We'll move into the live chat over here. A couple questions coming in. Got one from Martine saying, Jay, if you could meet the little boy you were, what would you tell him to help him on his growth journey?
That's a beautiful question. I actually teach something called identity timeline, which is about going back into those experiences that created the belief system and the person that you are today. And it's doing exactly that. It's going back and recognizing that younger version of yourself didn't have the skills or the knowledge or the awareness or the emotional intelligence even to comprehend or understand or give meaning to what was happening at the time. And it's about going back to specific flashbulb memories as such, and going there as the person that you are today and giving meaning to that so that you can move forward and allocate new meaning to that situation. So I guess what I would do is I'd pick a specific situation, because I think it's difficult to generalize. I mean, you could generalize, but I don't think it would have much impact. But I think if we went back to a specific situation, for me, it would be the feelings I had around my dad. And when I sort of realized that he didn't prioritize me as my father. And I think the message I would give to, or the meaning I would give to that moment, is that this is his first time too. You know, as kids, we expect that adults have it all dialed in. Like, you're the dad. What are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be here for me. I'm a kid. You know, that's how I thought. But I look at it today and I realized that I don't have kids right now, and I'm in my 30s. And at the time, that guy was in his 20s. And I was expecting him to have it all figured out. And I look back now, or I did look back, and I would judge him for his poor performance as a father, his lack of direction, his lack of maturity, his lack of presence, his lack of caring and supporting for me. And now I can look back on that situation and I can say, this was his first time too. He was still learning, and that's okay. He did the best he could, even if it wasn't good enough. It was the best he could.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful way to look at things. And I think we kind of have to go through maybe a period of, going through it, right? Like going through the anger and the emotions that come up, take them off the pedestal, because it's only by taking them off the pedestal where we can then see them as a human being, not as a god or of this untouchable person. And only once we do that, then we can then see them as perfectly imperfect, because they were exactly the way they were. And the way I like to look at it is, it was your experiences that made you become the person that you are today. And it's such an important part of your journey. Listening to it, I'd imagine, would be a completely different life if you had had a different father figure, for example, and a different upbringing, and all of these type of factors. So I think that's a wicked response. And I also like that approach for sort of healing and speaking to your inner child as well. In those times of meditation, just taking the time to really speak with them and talk about these situations and almost have a conversation with your younger self. I think that's a wicked way to do it. Got another question in here from Jason, and he said, regarding burnout and building a business, what are the lessons that you have learned, and how do you break this belief system that you have to be constantly doing something to achieve what you want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good question. So most people have a distorted view or perception of what constantly on means. So I do believe that in business, to be successful, you have to constantly be moving. I don't think you can stop. I do think you need to keep going. But that doesn't mean you constantly need to be working, because rest is part of growth. You know, like, we sleep to be able to wake up and perform. We stop to eat to give us energy to keep going. So how's that any different to having a break to rest your mind and your body? How's that any different to spending time with your partner and prioritizing date night so that your relationship at home is strong, so that you look forward to going home and at night, and you also are motivated by building a better life for your family? You know, if you hate life at home because your relationship's fallen apart because you've not prioritized it, you're going to want to stay at work. You're going to want to stay away from home. There's no motivation to make a better life for them. So what you're actually doing by deprioritizing the things that you probably started the business for in the first place, by deprioritizing those, you actually reduce the impact or growth potential of the business. So my advice for burnout and managing your time and energy in terms of growth is to stick things in the calendar that are the things, stick them in first, that are the things you started the business for. Like, if you want to spend more time with your family, then at the end of each week, so I do something called a Sunday reset. And it's basically where I debrief my week and then map out the next week. If I would think date nights are important, which most of you should if you're in a relationship, date night goes in first. I'll decide when it's going to be, how long it's going to be. I'll get a rough idea of what I want to do. That goes into the calendar. If I want to have some time with friends. I don't have kids, so you guys might not want to do this with kids, but I think about friends that, and most of my friends are in business, but it's friends that I might want to just connect with. So if I want to go and play golf, I'll decide when I want to go and do that, and I'll book that Wednesday morning off to play golf, or whatever it is. If there's anything that I need to do or that I prioritize in my life, those things will go in my calendar first, because these things are the reason that the business exists. Without these, I probably wouldn't have started the business. So it doesn't make sense to sacrifice these. It makes sense to prioritize these, so they get prioritized. Then the next thing is the 3 biggest needle movers for the week. So these are outcome based, not task based. So for example, if I was launching a program and it needed to be launched this week, then the outcome would be launch the program. I'd set that as a deadline, and then I'd say, well, what are the key tasks that need to happen this week in order for that outcome to happen? That being the main outcome. And again, I'll break it down into 3 main tasks. And those 3 main tasks will be given 60 to 90-minute deep work slots, and they will be prioritized usually towards the start of the week. And then I'll go to the second outcome and I'll do the same. And those things get put in. Anything else gets put on a list. I use one of these. I don't have shares in this company, but I probably should at some point. So I use something called a Clever Fox planner. It's the Ultimate Achievers Planner. It's a daily planner. And the only reason I use it, honestly, is that it aligns exactly how I've done goals for years. It lasts for 3 months. It enables me to set goals for the quarter based off my bigger vision goals. And then those quarterly goals get separated down into months, into weeks, and then into the day. And I put those, any other tasks gets put on a list for the week. And if I find myself with time, because either the time's become available or I finished a task earlier than expected, then one of the tasks from the list will be put into the calendar, and I'll do that task. I'd also say simple things that you can do daily. So exercise before 9 a.m. is something I would recommend. I know it doesn't work for everyone, but actually the reason that you wake up in the morning is because your cortisol levels start to go up. You actually need cortisol levels to spike to wake up. And the higher you can push your cortisol levels in the morning, you want them to kind of drop over the course of the day so that you're preparing yourself for sleep. Whereas if you train in the afternoon, you're actually pushing your cortisol levels higher, which makes it more difficult to sleep. So training in the morning gives you that more of a fall. Andrew Huberman talks about this quite a lot. So training in the morning, that's a good thing to do. Make sure you've got a morning routine that serves you first. Don't dive straight into work. I know that some people think differently, but this is what I've found to work. Prioritize water rather than coffee and energy drinks. Prioritize drinking water at least 2 liters a day, and you want lots of small amounts throughout the day rather than big glasses every so often. This is going to really help you to keep those energy levels and keep focus. And the reason I say that these things are important is because it means that you stay consistent and you stay like moving forward. Whereas if you allow yourself to crash, you're going to have 2 days off or 3 days off or a week off or whatever off because you need it. And then you're kind of going to feel guilty for having it because you're not working when you need to be working. Whereas if you build consistency so that you don't have these drops, you have a break, not because you need it, but because you want it, because this is the reason the business exists. And that's a different experience. And also when you have these things planned in, you get the ride of dopamine over like an extended dopamine hike that you get because you're looking forward to the thing. I don't know if you've ever noticed where you've got, let's say you're doing something exciting this afternoon, but you've got work to do. You're going to have a lot of energy and motivation and focus to get this work done, knowing that the thing in the afternoon is coming and you want to feel good about it. So you tend to get probably 2 days worth of work done in the morning because you've got this thing exciting that's happening. So you imagine if you had that staggered throughout your day, your week, your month, your year, these rewards that you deserve and you plan ahead for, it just keeps momentum and it makes the journey more enjoyable. So they're a few of the things that I would suggest.
Yeah, some really wicked suggestions in there. There were a couple in there, like the exercising first thing in the morning. I always used to put it off, and I'd be like, right, I'm productive in the morning. I need to get work done, but I found now that going back to the values, I value my health. That's my number one. Health and fitness is my number one value. So why wouldn't I wake up and do that as the first thing? Do my meditation, get the gym, jiu-jitsu out of the way. In Australia, we had jiu-jitsu classes at, I think it was 7 a.m. in the morning. It was such a great feeling. Just like I'd be on a high for the rest of the day and my work would usually be a lot better. So I resonate with a lot of that. I love the idea of 90-minute sprints. One of my struggles was not having that time really protected, because when you allow it to be interrupted, whether it's through personal connections or whatever else,
Mm.
you're not 100% present in what you're doing. And so your work suffers, your relationships suffer, and it's just all a bit of a mess. I think protecting that time is super important. Wicked suggestions there. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned with coffee as well. I've gone decaf coffee now and really noticed the difference. And you kind of see beyond the illusion. You're like, actually, no, I don't need this. And I need to be listening to my body more. And when you get to the point where you're having 2 coffees a day, one in the early afternoon, it's like that's a big no go,
Yeah.
big no go.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get stuck in that cycle, and I think you almost have to go through a burnout to realize, okay, right, let's have a reset. And I love that you talked about your solid foundations. What are the things that energize you and motivate you for your business, and get those in? So important. Friendships, you mentioned that, huge one. I'd always neglect that and think, okay, and then I'd reply to them maybe 3 or 4 days later, and it's like, hang on a sec, like I say that I value my relationships and friendships, so what's actually going on here? So it's, building a life you love and then scaling that is such a great approach. I wonder how much flexibility there is in your schedule, right? So let's say you need to get these things done. These are your outcomes you've set. These are the tasks you've set. What happens if you, for whatever reason, don't manage to get those done? I imagine over time you've become more efficient and productive as you've stuck to these. But what happens when you needed to get something done, but then you've also planned maybe a date night, or you've planned social activity with friends? What happens there?
Yeah, so you've got to remember that your calendar doesn't control you. You control the calendar, and you need to be okay with that. I think that the main problem is when you make changes based on how you feel rather than the reality of the situation. And for me, yes, it does take time, but I got to the point where I just over egg everything by 20 to 50%. So if I have a task that I think is going to take an hour, I will schedule 90 minutes. And it gives the perception, because time is a perception anyway. So, but it gives the perception of being ahead. So if I do take 60 minutes, even though I planned 90, even though I knew the task was going to be 60, I'm like, oh, I've got 30 minutes that I didn't expect to have. And that's a great feeling. Whereas if I planned 60 minutes and then went 10 minutes over, I'm like, oh, I'm behind. And it creates an unnecessary level and an unhealthy level of stress, which means that you're not fully focused because now you're panicking. Now your cortisol levels are increased. Your limbic system is becoming activated. Your prefrontal cortex is beginning to slow down or go into like sleep mode. Therefore, that makes it harder for you to do the thing that you need to do. And it's like this is what we're creating. We're creating a situation where it's harder for us to do the thing we need to do because we think we're prioritizing time by scheduling a tight schedule. It's the reverse. You're better off having, if you've got 10 things to do in a day, schedule the most important 3, over egg the time, put buffer blocks around them. I always call it like flight mode, not on your phone, but in your body and your mind, flight mode, because a lot of people struggle to stay focused because they think, oh, what if a client messages me? Oh, what if I need to do this? What if this comes up? What if an email comes through? And my thought process here is, what if you were on a flight and a client needed to get hold of you? You couldn't answer the phone. You can't check your email. You can't do the work. So what difference does it make? That they're going to survive. So put your life on flight mode. You are not available. You are on a flight doing this task for the next 90 minutes. Everything else can wait. And that's what I would do with that situation. So yeah, but if something does overrun, like I get it. It can happen. Literally something urgent might happen. And I'll give you an example. I had my day planned out, my week planned out, everything was perfect, and we had a leak. It started raining. I'd moved into this house that we're in now. It's quite an old house, and it started leaking downstairs when it was raining. Water going everywhere. My partner screams upstairs, so I stopped what I was doing. Obviously, ran downstairs, had to deal with that, and that took maybe an hour and a half of my time to cover up the leak, get a bucket out, find a roof that could come out, make all the electric safe, all that sort of stuff. And when I came back upstairs to sort of carry on with the work, I was technically an hour and a half behind schedule. But what I also recognize is that Well, I still have two more tasks scheduled that are both like 20 to 30 minutes over egged. I still have buffer blocks around those times as well. I still have gaps in my calendar where I was going to do less of a priority tasks if I got all these tasks done. So I've designed a calendar that sets me up to win, even if something comes up. So that's what I do with work. And you know what? If we did have a date night planned and something important came up that had to be done, I mean, I can't think of an example where this would happen for me, but let's say it did, it just communicate. I'd say to my partner, like, Naomi, this has come up. I could do with getting it done. I know we plan to do this on this evening or whatever it is. Is there any way that we can move this or do something different on another day? And I can prioritize this. And if she said, yeah, I'd do it. Do you know what? If she said no, I mean, I could only imagine that this would be a client piece of work that would need to be done for it to be this urgent, in which case I would just say control your time better. When you're speaking to a client and they say, can you get it done by this date? I would just be honest and say, no, I can't. The earliest I can get it done by is this date. However, if I do manage to get it done beforehand, I will let you know. But just to set expectations, this is when it's going to be done. And if they say that's not good enough, then I'd say, well, look, I do have people that work with me from time to time that could do this. However, they're going to come at an additional cost. If you're happy to pay that, I can get them to do it for you, and then we should be able to get it done by that date. But it won't be me that's doing it. So what do you want to do? Do you want to pay extra and have one of our contacts do it? Or are you happy to wait until X, potentially a little bit sooner than that? What do you want to do? I'm giving you choice. Remember that this is your business. You are in control of it. You wouldn't have planned this or agreed to this because otherwise you would have scheduled it because it would have been a priority. So for this to come up like this, clearly it is something that has not been agreed to. It is out of expectation. That's the way I see this. So yeah, you choose your calendar. It's your life. You decide what it looks like. Take control of it.
Man, I love that. And I really feel as though we tend not to put these boundaries in place earlier on in our journey, right? Because there's this fear. If we don't say yes to this, then what if we lose a client? Or maybe this person won't like me or whatever. But the two things that spring to mind out of that is, well, okay, well, if that were to be the case, even if it was a worst case scenario, which is probably unlikely anyway, right? Because the reality is they're coming to you because they appreciate your work and you're getting stuff done to them to a high quality. But then the other side to that is, well, if for some reason they weren't happy with what you're providing, then it's just not in alignment with your life. And that's why I love this concept of building a business that scales your life, not the other way around. This is why I think I found it difficult working in a sort of more, I say, corporate setting, because it's like you're playing by someone else's rules. And I hear it from people all the time where I'm working outside of my normal hours for someone else's vision, and you're not in control of your life. And I think that's one of my biggest things is just I really like autonomy. I like choosing where I like to do things. I don't like doing things that I don't want to do. And it's just prioritizing peace. And it sounds like you've done that there. And when you do prioritize peace, that's when you're going to get the majority of your answers. So, yeah, loved all of that. We've covered a lot of ground here, Jay. So, yeah, such an inspiration. So cool to hear about your journey, the ups and downs you've been through, the childhood experiences, bounce back from that and continue to get up over and over and over again. And yeah, living a life of alignment now. It's super, super inspiring and a great reminder for people who are on the journey and do feel a bit stuck to, yeah, keep going, be open to the lessons, and it will all make sense eventually. Feel free to drop anything else you think could be useful for the people listening. Otherwise, yeah, tell us where people can find out more about yourself, the services that you offer, how they can connect with you, and also where they can buy your book as well.
Yeah, so I mean, my final message would be that a lot of the problems that you're looking externally for and a lot of the validation that you're seeking externally for is only going to happen when you start looking internally. I think it can sound cheesy, and I'm a mindset coach, but I'm definitely not the woo woo type. I do like I do like to understand psychologically, neurologically, biologically how these things are happening. And I like to understand the science behind them. And when I can understand the science, I will embody it and I will move forward with it. And that's what I do. It's the reason I created my performance mindset community. And I think I just want people to recognize that, I've helped a lot of people that had all the strategy in front of them, but they were still looking for more strategy because that strategy wasn't working for them. And when they actually looked internally, and I mean literally shifting beliefs, or recognizing that they are operating from the version of themselves that created the problems they currently have, instead of looking at that V3 identity, that future version of themselves that has removed the limiting beliefs, has removed the fear, is stepping into a place of confidence and direction. And it's when you can step into that type of identity, a lot of the problems you have just remove themselves. You've almost got to create space to allow the things that you are chasing to actually just come to you. I'm not saying don't do the work, because that doesn't happen either. But often it's like a relationship. They say when you're going out there looking for the right guy or the right girl, like, you don't find them. But as soon as you stop looking, the right person just presents themselves. That's not going to happen if you stay in your house. You still have to go out. You can just stop putting so much energy and effort into finding the right thing and just be present. Go network, go meet people, see friends, get outside, go to these like gatherings and such, and you will meet the right people because you're focusing on doing the things that you enjoy doing, which is why you're in those locations. And that, honestly, is the same with business. Get around the right people, show up in the way that you feel confident and comfortable showing up, be consistent, share your message, share your truth, because that is how you'll often find the solution to the things that you're currently struggling with. So yeah, that'd be my message. In terms of my book, you can get it on Amazon. Yeah, you can just literally just search "Start Messy, Succeed Anyway" and it'll come up. So that's the book. I also have Instagram. So my Instagram is J Staniforth Mindset. So Jay Staniforth and then Mindset. You can connect with me there. And yeah, I also have a little mini free course if anyone wants to dig a little bit deep into themselves. If you connect with me on Instagram, I can give you access to that. You can just check it out. There's a free neural system diagnostic tool in there as well that will go through some questions that I've trained in AI. I used to do this one-on-one, but I've trained in AI now to do this. It'll go through a series of questions and it'll basically highlight to you areas within your belief system, identity, behaviors, business, and performance where you're being held back, and it will give you some suggestions of the sort of things that you can step into to actually start moving forward. So again, you can do that for free as well. The best thing is just to connect with me on Instagram and I can send it to you.
Yeah, we'll put all of these in the description, brother. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on again. Been a real pleasure. Thank you to the live audience for tuning in as well. Appreciate the questions. Take it easy, guys.